Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Are there vampires on the dark web? I know, you think this might be a crazy topic, and I agree. I didn't believe it as well. A friend told me about a party she had gone to and told me about the strange happenings going on there. She said there were people drinking each other's blood like they were vampires, and that she let someone do it to her. She said it was simply erotic and started going back every weekend like it was some kind of drug calling her name. She told me the name of the place. It was French, something like Have de Sang. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I put it in Google Translate and it really means Blood Haven. I couldn't get much information out of her. Every week, she came back to college, looking a little less healthy than before. We only had one class together, so I assumed she was attending all of the others, and I'm sure other people noticed it as well. On the last day that I saw her, the dark circles under her eyes were extreme, and she was so pale. I could even see the blue veins under her skin very clearly. The professor asked her if she was okay, and she just smiled. It was then I noticed the left veneer fang in her mouth. I think it was a veneer. It had to be, because her teeth were pretty normal before that. "Are you okay?" I asked her when the professor excused the class. "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" She answered with her breath reeking of copper and decay. "Are you still going to that club?" She leaned in closer to me and gave a glance to the professor before answering. "Yeah, now shh. No one can know about it." "You look like shit," I said a little louder than expected. She smiled weakly, then grabbed her books and ran out of the classroom. I just shrugged and grabbed my books, and the professor gave me a glare before I left, and I think I heard him say as I walked out of the door, "Mind your own, Shell." That night, I went home and I decided to try and find what she was talking about. I tried to search for every version of Have de Sang possible, and then, after learning it meant Blood Haven, I searched for that as well. After about an hour of no luck finding any such phrase at all, I decided to get my studies done for the week. I really didn't have a lot of time to spend sleeping, so I knew just the cure for my little fatigue problem. I opened my Tor browser and I clicked the link into the dark web to get some uppers that I've had a hard time finding on the surface web ever since they started keeping track of pharmacy sales. I'm not ADHD or anything like that, but the stuff really does help me stay awake to study for exams. I can't get it through a doctor because I'm not ADHD, but I can buy it with confidence from a certain hookup on the dark web. I normally only go to their sites, but I today came across a really strange banner at the bottom of their page. The banner read, "You don't need drugs to stay awake forever. TVC." A little too excited, I clicked on the link which took me to a black screen with deep red letters that resembled dripping blood. The query said, "Are you over 18? And I clicked yes. Another link popped up and said, "Are you a Fed?" Of course, I clicked no. Wouldn't they? Then, another button popped up with a text. "Click to enter, but do not tell anyone. You have been warned." I clicked the button and waited for about 30 seconds before the next window popped up. and this window was a bit disturbing. It was a picture of a naked woman and a man dressed in all black. He was looking directly at the camera while holding the woman close to him. Blood was dripping down her neck and off her breast and onto the floor. He was smiling, and blood dripped down from his bottom lip and from the two prominent fangs that protruded from his gums. There was no way this was real. There are no such things as vampires, but I went ahead and clicked the continue button anyway. A window popped up with the words that said, "Welcome, human," and a video started to play. There were people in a room dancing in what looked like blood squirting out from all small holes in the walls. From one corner, a young woman was pulled from a cage screaming. She tried to stand her ground, but the floor was so slick and wet that she horrifically slid along as a large man in a white blood-stained shirt and black pants pulled her through the crowd. As he passed the camera dragging her along, he gave one quick smile and then a wink. It was the man from the original picture. At first, he was very handsome, but as he passed, his eyes glowed red and his face snarled up like a hungry demon. He gave out one loud laugh as he pulled the woman to a large tank. She screamed as he yanked off her clothes like a tissue paper, and then he tossed them aside. For a moment he grabbed her and sunk his long enormous fangs into her jugular as she collapsed into his arms and began rubbing her blood-soaked body all over his. He held up his middle finger toward me with an incredibly long fingernail, then sliced her from neck down to her pelvis. As her guts began tumbling from her abdomen and blood gushed from her center, the other vampires, or whatever they were, circled around her and knelt down around her body to catch the blood now flowing in all directions. The man grabbed her intestines and held them toward the camera, laughing in victory and taking a large bite from them as her screams gurgled down into nothing. Then the camera flashed off and another of what I assumed would only be another actor appeared. "Did you like the show?" He looked straight at me through the lens. I felt warm inside, like he was actually looking at me. "I don't understand. This was a show?" I said dumbly into my screen, thinking he can actually answer me. And yet he did. "Oh yes, do you think we could actually get away with this?" Moments later, the woman who was torn apart came stumbling out of the other room and laughing with the other men. She was still naked, but completely clean, and the others had clothes on that still looked blood-stained. "Come, play." She cooed into the camera, then waltzed off into another doorway. The main vampire held up a business card, and I quickly snapped a picture with my phone. I don't know what was going on, but this was all an act, and a fun one at that, and I wanted to see what it was all about. "Tomorrow night at 11 p.m., be here. You must have $100 at the door, or you won't be able to get in," the man said, and then the screen went dark. Honestly, I couldn't sleep that night. I wondered what would happen if I actually did go to the location given to me on the card. All night, I tossed and turned thinking about it and wondering what it would be like to experience such a cosplay event. I decided the next night that I was going to grab $100 out of the ATM and head on over to that place. Why not? It was all fake, right? I went to the class the next day and then stopped by the bank after. Instead of only $100, I took out $400 and grabbed a cab to the next city over. I didn't know if there was going to be drinking involved or what, and leaving my car in the city downtown wasn't acceptable. Once there, I decided to get a hotel room and then some black hair dye and makeup at the drugstore. I also stopped by a thrift store and picked up some really cool clothes that made a great goth costume. And that afternoon at the hotel, I put together my masterpiece. Once I arrived around 10 to 11 p.m., they greedily took the 520s from my hand and stamped my arm with the stamp of the devil on the inside of my right wrist. I'm not sure what the significance of that was. I suppose so. It didn't get washed off if I went to the restroom. And as I entered the room, I noticed the walls were completely white and the floors were covered in dark red carpets. Tables lined the walls and the floor was bare, allowing for dancing. And the tank in the corner was empty. I went to the back and ordered some of the house's special red wine and found a seat at an empty table near the exit. I cringed as I tasted the wine. It was definitely wine, but had a strange coppery taste to it, like blood. I tried to act as if I enjoyed it, and as I consumed the contents of the glass, the light dimmed and people started coming out of the red curtains in the back. They were dressed in all black clothes that were really tight. Their eyes were black with red irises and lips stained red. One smiled at me, and his fangs protruded from the red slots of his lips. For a moment, I was lost in his gaze, until he looked away. It was unnerving to say the least. They all picked a partner to dance with, and he picked me. I stood, feeling a little woozy from what I supposed was the wine, and I began dancing with this strange man. He ran his hands up and down my body and pulled me close with his long arms, like snakes wrapped around my body. I felt his tongue against my neck and then burning, as his teeth pierced my skin. I wanted to scream, but something had a hold of my voice. As he continued to suck the blood from my neck, I fell into his arms. I remember there was screaming next. Another person was being dragged to the tank as they cuffed her feet and hung her upside down and lowered her into the pit. They cut her wrist and neck as the blood poured from her body and the remains were discarded. Then another, after another, was lowered into the tank upside down with their feet and discarded after their bodies were exsanguinated. I didn't know if it was real or not, nor did I care at that point. All I wanted was his lips upon my neck, and if so to read my mind, he just kept going. Soon, the tank was full, and the walls started spreading out the red liquid. It splashed on my face, and as I licked my lips, I knew it was blood. I fell into the stranger's arms, and I only remember him picking me up and bringing me to a room in the back where he removed my clothes and washed me off and covered me with a blanket. The next morning, my clothes were as clean as when I purchased them and sat next to my bed with a rose. "Come back soon. I want to taste you again," was written on the note. At this point, I have no idea if any of it was real or if they gave me drugs to make me hallucinate or what. I do know that I have 2 puncture wounds in my neck, and I am going back again tonight, for I am drawn to the place. I feel a little faint and felt the need to eat a lot of meat today. It seemed to give me a lot of strength and push me toward the door to another night at the Blood Haven. If you do see this online on the dark web, do not attempt to go there, for it will capture you, and you will not be free of its clutches. I hope they do not read this, for I do not know what will happen to me if it is found out that I told a secret to everyone. But I must warn you to not go there. That is all I will say as I'm putting on those goth clothes and getting ready to head out of the door. My friends say that I'm a little crazy, cruising around on the dark web like it's some place to hang out on my weekend nights. I used to have a social life with them, so I guess that they're just jealous. When I started college, we would all hang out together. But then I got really behind on some assignments, and these weren't just some assignments that I could just do overnight. It was almost the end of the semester, and I was complaining in a forum somewhere that I hadn't read any of the material and that I didn't know what was really going on. That's when a guy on the forum named The Jester spoke up. He messaged me privately and said that I could probably buy those papers off the dark web if I have the money. I was curious to see what he was talking about, so I downloaded the app and I started visiting the websites that he sent to me. I'm going to be honest here. I would have never found these sites without his help because their links are insanely stupid. These were mostly scanned images of other people's homework. Some were only a few bucks and others were in the thousands. I didn't have thousands, so I bought a few papers that cost me between $5 to a couple of $100 each. I figured that I could take pieces of the best ones and put them together. I'd spend all night reading them and then work out something in the morning. I went through most of them and I took notes. They were really well written, and I was surprised to find out how easy it was to actually cheat on a paper using other people's work. I wasn't plagiarizing the material, but using them as reference points. I didn't feel like reading 3 whole months of text just to pick out the information for the assignment. If I could pull it off, then this would be good enough. A couple of the pieces were nonsense garbage though. They really weren't that expensive and it didn't matter. It wasn't until the last one where I found myself wondering what the hell I had gotten myself into. I opened up the page and it had hand-drawn sketches of adults and kids. They were naked, but they weren't explicit. At first, I wasn't sure what I was looking at and thought it might be some medical journal. But then I realized that it was a butcher's diagram of meat cuts. The pages looked used, like they had been read many times and even used in a greasy environment. I read the descriptions and almost lost my dinner. There were recipes for some of the most popular dishes we all know and love, which included anything from sizzling steaks to stuffed mushrooms and lasagna. They talked about how to get the most tender pieces and where and from whom to get the cuts. There were pictures of the carving knives and pans to use. And at the end of the booklet, which was obviously pieced together by taking pictures with a camera and putting together in one big JPG, there was a link to submit your own recipes. A freaking link. I don't know how I managed to download this horrible monstrosity of a link, but I pray nothing was sent back to these people. I don't know what to do or where to get rid of it. Do I send it to the cops? The feds? Have I done something illegal myself? I hope that it didn't send these creeps my IP address. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.